Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Daniel. We're in chapter 7. And I just want to pick up from verse 9 just to remind all of us that there was a name that was given to God. As you can see in the book of Daniel, the name of God was never mentioned. It was only mentioned as the God Most High, the one in the heavens. And here we have the Ancient of Days. The idea of Ancient of Days is, I guess, we can actually say that it is someone who is old from the old days or one from the old of days. And it is a reference with regards to God in an Aramaic and a Hebrew sense. And so you see verse 9 and 10 talking about a period of time where God would execute judgment. And so just bear in mind that the name of God is not mentioned, but it is Him. And there is a little description of how He is: a garment white as snow, hair on the head like pure wool. The throne was all ablaze. And more important is there is a lava flow coming out from the throne. And then the books or the scrolls were opened with regards to the sins and the merits of those who are being judged. This is a scene in the dream of Daniel. And if you recall, what I meant about dreams and visions is that the elements in the dreams and visions are using common words to describe something that is not natural. It is not something that is seen, but it is expressed using common words or language or vocabulary of Daniel at that time. And so God is described as somebody who is going to sit on the throne in purity and justice, and he will open up the scrolls of the sins of the people that he is going to judge, as well as their merits. In verse 10, the understanding from the Hebrew, the Jews' comments were this: the thousands upon thousands serving him appears to be the angels that serves him, and then the 10,000 upon 10,000 that was standing before him appears to be the ones to be judged. That's apparently. Now, we don't really know and we can't really tell for sure. But what we can observe is this: there is another perspective, is that these are all the angels, and this is what we call the court of judgment. Now, as we go on from here in the book of Daniel, it is important for us to look at what I have just said as a form of interpretation. It is not to be dogmatic about, but this is basically how most Jews would understand these statements. And with that, as long as we are not dogmatic or we insist that that's the finality of the explanation, we are okay, as long as we can read this logically. With that, the dream of Daniel continues. Verse 11, he says that I kept looking. Verse 11 is I kept looking because of the voice. This is the voice of the arrogant words of the horn that was speaking. And we noted the horn uh, is not particularly clear, but it describes either force, a government, a religion, or a group of religions, or a group of belief. All these are important because the horn talks about something that governs the minds and the lives of the people then. And so it comes out of the Roman Empire, and particular interest is given to this particular horn because it talks about arrogant words. Now, later on, you find that these arrogant words is spoken against God. And so I kept looking until the beast was killed and its body was destroyed and given to a burning fire. Now, understand it is not just the horn that was destroyed. You would see that it was the monster with sharp iron teeth and with all the horns, and three was destroyed after that. And then you have a little horn. So we're talking about that little horn that does that. But this beast, when we were looking at this beast earlier, it is the beast that is destroyed. Understand this imagery. So we're trying to actually figure out what was Daniel actually seeing. When the beast or the monster is destroyed, it was destroyed by fire. One of the things that we'll understand is that when something is thrown into the fire, it is completely gone. And that would be the case of verse 11. So the beast, which is the kingdom, the horns along with it would be the kings, and the little horn also in the body, which is part of the Roman Empire, and whatever comes thereafter would be gone. Now, verse 12 then describes this. As for the rest of the beasts, remember, there were three other beasts, three monsters before. And those monsters represented Babylon, Medo Persia, and the Grecian Empire. Then it says here, their dominion, their rule was taken away, was removed. But an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time or for a set time. Now, this is a very peculiar Aramaic word. It is until times and time. Until times, plural, and time, singular. Basically, it's an idiom that says, for a period, the dominion was taken away, but life was granted. Every time you see the word life in the Hebrew, life is something that you can see. And so you can see the effects of the three monsters of their character, but the rule over the people was removed. That is verse 12. And then verse 13. Verse 13 says, I kept looking in the night visions, meaning as this was destroyed in fire, and with this destruction, he kept looking harder and harder. What did he see? So Daniel was just describing one after another. And it says here, behold, I saw with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. Now, I'm trying to attempt to help us see what is being said. There was a throne, and the throne was on fire. And with the throne on fire, there was a lava flow. And the lava flow is also burning. And on the throne was the Ancient of Days. So I had tried to represent the Ancient of Days as someone seated down there. Now, we can't draw any of those, but just understand that the Ancient of Days is represented that way. The throne or the court of judgment was set up, and the Ancient of Days was there. And so we could actually imagine that Daniel was looking hard in the visions and is trying to show him the Ancient of Days seated on the throne of judgment. So we call this Ancient of Days. Now we have another. Behold the clouds of heaven. The clouds of heaven, when we can actually talk about clouds, and as clouds, I guess this is what we would see, clouds of heaven. So we have clouds of heaven. And then it says here, one like the son of a man. Now it says here, one like. First one is one like. And the idea of this in the Aramaic, which is in Hebrew, is one that resembles. All right? Resembles. Then we have this phrase here called a son of man. Now I want to show you the Aramaic is bar enash, which is in Aramaic. In the Hebrew, it would likely be ben anash, right? Ben anash. But the word anash is almost never used in the singular. But why are we talking about this? Is because the translation itself requires a little bit of work. It says here bar enash, and the word bar means a son. And this is in the construct form, it is of. Enash literally means a mortal man, of mortal man. That is how it is read. And so when it says here, one like bar enash, or one that resembles a son of mortal man, then we are given the picture that this is like Daniel, a person, a human person, nothing of the divine nature, if you want to call it that way, because it uses this phrase, mortal man. So bar enash. And it comes in a cloud, and he draws near to the Ancient of Days. Now, with this, I'm just trying to help us see the picture, the imagery in the dream or the vision of Daniel. And with this, I guess you will be able to tell that this is a dream scenario. It is not naturally possible, but in a dream, anything is possible. The impossible can happen because it is trying to communicate an idea or a message. And so now we have this presented to the Ancient of Days. And so, in so doing, this is commonly understood as a Messiah to God. I will say that the Bar Enosh, a son of a mortal man that came to present to the Ancient of Days, is actually the Messiah. It is supposed to be like a king because it's comparing to the previous kings. The question would be, why clouds? It is just a dream. And one of the expression is this, that a son of a mortal man appears in a cloud of the heavens because it is seen as a mode of approach, that he will come quickly to present himself. And the cloud presents the imagery of an unhindered mode of transportation. And if we just stay with the text, the Bar Enash, the son of a mortal man, is very much the Messiah being presented to the Ancient of Days, in contrast to the other beasts who are called the kings. The Ancient of Days is God Himself. It is a title of God, like the Most High, the highest one. The son of a mortal man, Bar Enosh, is the Messiah. Now, in the New Testament, you find that there is this expression, son of man. It seems to allude to this. The Son of Man will come in the clouds. Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24. And it alludes to this passage here as the Messiah. Now, if you notice in Matthew 24, it is spoken of as a third person. It is never spoken as a first person. And since it's not spoken in the first person, it would be very difficult to say that Jesus says, "It is me. I am the Son of a Man." In this passage, it doesn't say. And so it is understood by the Jews as Messiah. Who is he? They don't know. When he comes, everybody will know. And so they don't see as Jesus, for example. And because this is also a problematic passage, because this is not a title. A son of a man or Bar Enosh is not a title. Bar Enosh, as you can see in this passage, it is a description. Someone who is like a son of a mortal man. It is not a title. And so it is saying that this person who comes to approach God is a man. It's a human being, a mortal man, somebody who will die. Verse 14. And what is important here is the translation. It says, "To him was given." Now, this is not exactly how it should read. I guess you can say that he gave. I think "he gave" is a much better translation. And he gave to him, which tells us the dominion, the glory, and a kingdom was given by the Ancient of Days to this, a son of a mortal man. And so that would be a better way of describing this. And he gave to him dominion, honor, and a kingdom. And moreover, it says this, and all the peoples, nations, and languages. Now, these are the standard Aramaic way of expression, like how Nebuchadnezzar had written to the people, like how King Darius had written to the people. It is about the peoples they had conquered, the nations in there, and the various languages that they all spoke, that they might serve him. Again, this word serve him means to listen and do as he says. Then we are told that his dominion is an everlasting dominion. Again, this is not everlasting as in the English word. It is everlasting in an Aramaic Semitic style language. This means a long time. The dominion will be for a long time. When it says this, it will be longer than the other beasts. The first three monsters and the fourth monsters, this dominion of this person is longer than the rest. That is what it's trying to say. Now, what is interesting is the dominion was given. He didn't have to fight for it. Whereas the other four monsters that represented the governments and the horns, the kings, they had to fight each of them in the same territory. Whenever we say the same territory, it is the same geography and it overlaps into the land of God's people. And then it says, what does it mean for a long time? Then it says, which will not pass away. Now, this idea will not pass away or go away means there will not be a replacement. Not pass away literally means not replace. Now, in the earlier three monsters, you had the subsequent monster taking over, and then even the fourth monster was destroyed in the fire. But this particular dominion that was given to what we would now call the Messiah will not be replaced. And then it says here that his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. And so not only that it is not replaced, the first three kingdoms was replaced, right? The first three. The fourth kingdom was destroyed, which is this. This is the fourth kingdom. Destroyed in fire means no more, burn away. So the idea here that is going to be communicating to Daniel for our purposes of understanding is that this particular kingdom is a dominion that will not be replaced nor destroyed. There will not be a subsequent kingdom that will come to conquer it, nor will it be destroyed by itself. And so God destroyed the fourth kingdom, and this is the final kingdom. Now, until verse 14, I am suggesting that we need to be very clear as to what the dream and the vision of Daniel constitutes. That's what we're trying to do, to unravel the Aramaic, to understand the language, and try to picture what it's there. One of the things that you will find is that a lot of people will have all kinds of interpretation, which is fine. But the interpretation needs to fall in line and not go beyond the dream. Why? Because if it goes beyond the dream, then you are inserting information that was not here in chapter 7. If you explain it in a way where it is not possible as what was described in the dream, then that explanation is not workable. And so I am suggesting that we must first understand the imagery of the dream and understand the implications of those details that Daniel said. What Daniel didn't say, we don't care. Why? Because he didn't want us to know. And because we don't know, we don't have to insert details, but we will explain based on whatever details is there. Sometimes we may not be able to explain, and it is okay to not have any strong opinions about a particular detail that was described. But so far, all we know very clearly is there were three monsters that were replaced. The kingdom of Babylon, the Medo-Persian kingdom, the Grecian kingdom, and the fourth one that was destroyed with teeth of iron and very, very gruesome and very fearsome beasts. Well, that was destroyed. So what was clear then in the minds of the readers as we read it is that we only need to understand enough of the details to identify the kingdom. And with that kingdom, then we know that there were four: Babylon, Medo-Persia, the Grecian Empire, and the Roman Empire. The final one in verse 14 would be the Messianic kingdom. And the Messianic kingdom is not fought by wars, it is given by God. And so God has to do something to lead the dominion to be able to be recognized by all the peoples, all the nations, and all the languages that is around the world. And the recognition is this is a kingdom that's unlike the predecessors. Now that we have that set, we move on to verse 15. Verse 15 says this. It says, as for me, Daniel, and notice in chapter 7, he is speaking as a first person. My spirit was distressed within me. This idea of distress, uh, it it really means that there is something in his spirit or inside himself. And whenever it says my spirit or my wind is distressed. So inside of him is having a storm. It is blowing all over the place. Inside of him, he has no peace. He is feeling very awed, very fearful, very alarmed. That is the kind of meaning. Because the Semitic language is a very imagery type language, very much like the Chinese language. So you can actually see this idea is the wind inside of him was very stormy, very distressful. It is blowing everywhere. It is like digging his digging inside of him, meaning it is bouncing all over the place. This is that word. And it needs to be thought through. It needs to be imagined how stressful Daniel was. That is running all over the place. The wind is banging all over his body. He has no peace. Then it says that the visions in my mind kept alarming me. Now we need to explain this. First of all, mind here uh, really means head. The visions in my head is disturbing me, alarming me, uh, making me or terrifying me. I think that would be good. Which tells us that we now have an A and a B. The first part, my spirit distress within me, is A. And then the visions in my mind kept alarming me, right? Would be a B. They are talking about the same thing. He feels very troubled. It is very frightening. It is very terrifying. Then in verse 16, we begin to have an interaction between Daniel in his vision. He is actually not only that he is dreaming it, he is also featured in his dream. And in his dream, I went near one of those who were standing by and began requesting him the exact meaning of all this. There were many angels and many people who were standing there. I suppose he was talking to one of the angels. And it is for Daniel to know who it is. And in this case, it would not be a human being, it would be an angel. And and that would be the thousands upon thousands, the myriads upon myriads, or the 10,000 upon 10,000, where one aspect of it talks about the heavenly judgment court, where there are all the angels present, ready to execute what God is describing. And one of those who were standing there would be an angel. And so I approach. So it is in his dream, and Daniel is featured in his dream to talk to one of those in the dream angels and asking him, what exactly does this mean? And so he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Now, this is important because what is being said relates to the dream that we've tried to bring out in the Aramaic. Verse 17. Now, we have talked a little bit about the interpretation earlier, and I hope that as we talk a little bit more about it, that you will get some clarity, that the details are not particularly important, but enough to identify what the beasts represent. Now, again, these great beasts, and I call them monsters for lack of a better word, in our modern day, the great beasts are monsters because they are not the animals that we can see on a daily basis. And they are and Daniel uses some of the animals that we're familiar with to describe the monsters. There are 4 in number. And again, I want us to remember that in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, there was a head of gold, the chest and the arms of silver, Medo Persia. So Babylon, the head, Medo Persia, the arms. And then you have the belly and the thighs of bronze. That would be the Grecian Empire. And then the legs of iron and the feet, iron mixed with miry clay, still iron. And so that would be the 4th kingdom of iron. That would be the Roman Empire. And so the 4 great beasts are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. And so when you talk about 4 kings, we can also think about kings as a ruler, king as a governor, king with an absolute control over the land, an emperor perhaps. Verse 18, but the saints of the highest one. Now, this word saints is important. In the Aramaic, the word translated saints is Kaddish, which is similar to the word Kadosh, which is holy ones. Holy ones. Now, I don't like this word saints. I'm going to strike it off because the word saints is a modern construct. Literally, they are holy ones. Now, what does that mean? You can call them the special ones. Holy means special, different, unique. The word saints it gives us a wrong understanding, as if they were the sinless ones. It's not. They are special because God has pronounced them to be a holy nation. And so we are talking about Israel in this case. And so they are the holy ones of the highest one. Notice in the book of Daniel, we don't talk about the name of God. We use euphemism, terminology, titles, but we don't call God by his name, not like the other parts of the Tanakh. The Yod He Vav He is never ever used in the book of Daniel. And so we always look at this, the Most High, Elyon. Elyon is like in Genesis chapter 14, when Abraham was with Melchizedek, and he spoke about the God on high, same name. And these would be the Semitic references to God himself. So it says that the holy ones will receive the kingdom. What kingdom? This one here. The kingdom of the Messiah. And so it says, and take the possession of the kingdom forever, for all ages to come. Now, these words are important. The possession of the kingdom is not forever. It is for alam or olam. Long time. That's all it means. And then for all ages to come is Alam al-Miyah, that would be epoch of epochs, a long period of long periods, a long time, really, a long time. How long is this? Some say 70 years, some say 700 years, whatever that may be. It is not told to us. So we are only speculating. But all it says is that in that final kingdom, it will be for a long time. I would say the long time period here, or the alam or olam concept, would be longer than all the other first four kingdoms put together. That would be my estimation. The epoch of epochs, the kingdom that endures longer than the longest of the kingdoms. That would be a very good way of expressing. So the kingdom would be in the possession of Israel. That would be the holy ones. Then it says here, then after hearing this, so it's after hearing, then Daniel says, I desire to know the exact meaning of the fourth beast. Now, the idea of the exact meaning is the truth, or what can be supported. What Daniel literally means is that he wished to determine what can be established, what can be evidenced, what he can truly say the fourth monster really is. Because it was so different from all the others. They were changing, and suddenly the fourth beast were completely different, exceedingly dreadful. Dreadful means fearsome. Fearsome. And then it says, with its teeth of iron and its claws of copper. Now, this is an additional piece of information. In the earlier piece of information, it only says that the feet would crush and trample. So we can say here, the mouth and the teeth devoured and crushed everything. And then the feet trampled down the balance that the mouth did not eat. Basically, this fourth beast is so fearsome. This one here, that is the one that Daniel really wants to know. Now, I am using this as an introduction, and tomorrow we will look at this in greater detail with this and the rest of that beast, because it is troubling Daniel, and we will dive into some of the Aramaic details so that we understand what that conversation with the angel was. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.